The city gave the troupe 48 hours in the asylum before the wrecking crews arrived. "We're saving culture and the demolition budget," their director Lena quipped as she shoved open the blister-painted door, her voice echoing down corridors that still smelled faintly of ether and mildew. Hugo, the troupe's resident playwright, followed with a trunk of hand props and a half-smoked cigarette clamped between his teeth. The rest, Mara, Callum, Sarai, and Felix, drifted in behind him, carrying racks of costume pieces salvaged from thrift stores. The asylum had been empty since 1986, when the last patients were bussed to a newer facility on the outskirts of town. Dust sheets still draped wheelchairs as though protecting them from nightmares, and in the common room, 2 child-sized mannequins stared eternally at an unplugged television. The atmosphere was perfect for the troupe's brand of immersion theater. No stage lights, no separation between audience and performers, just raw space and nerve. They chose the sun porch ward as their playing area. Floor-to-ceiling windows had lost most of their glass, so rain hissed through the broken panes, pooling on buckled linoleum. Mara flicked water off her boots. "We're going to electrocute ourselves if we plug anything in," she muttered. "We won't need electricity," Hugo insisted. "Pure candle power. Shadows do the work for us." He opened his script folder, ready to distribute copies, but inside he found something else. A thick manila file, stamped closed case. Pages were numbered in red pencil and covered in typewritten notes, doctor signatures, and a looping black scrawl that looked fresh, though the ink should have dried decades ago, and frowned. "Very funny. Who swapped my draft?" No one confessed. Lena plucked a page. "Patient 42. Exhibits ideation of multiple selves. Violent crescendo forecast within 24 hours. Her brow furrowed. "Are these clinical notes?" Callum lifted another sheet. On the back, someone had written dialogue in italics. "Callum. I'm not trapped in here with you. You're trapped with me." Sounds metallic. Snap. Arterial spray. Fade to black. Darai, the youngest, laughed nervously. "Meta as hell, Hugo. Dark, but on brand." "I swear it's not mine," he said. "My play was about a family reunion. Mild existential dread. Tops." They flipped deeper into the file. Each actor's name appeared beside psychiatric observations, followed by scripted lines and stage directions describing that actor's specific death. Felix's section ended with, "Felix attempts a joke about paranoia, chokes on own laughter, asphyxiates." "Okay, that one does sound like me," Felix admitted, but color had drained from his cheeks. Lena scanned the colophon. The final page bore a stamp dated for the very day of their performance, and a curt verdict, prognosticis, sailed. She looked up. "Is this some marketing gimmick Hugo planted?" Hugo shook his head. "Whatever it is, we can use it. Imagine the buzz." Mara ran a fingertip across the ink, smiled. "Wet. Fresh typing, fresh signatures. Either someone broke in earlier today or—" She didn't finish. Silence settled, broken only by rain ticking on shattered glass. Then Lena clapped once. "Listen. We have 48 hours and a found text that people would pay to see. We stage it guerrilla style. Invite an audience tomorrow at midnight. One show only. We improvise around the clinical notes, flip the doom into catharsis." "Without rehearsing?" Sarai asked. "That's the point. Immediate, dangerous, honest." Felix raised a hand. "You read the same directions I did, right? They describe us dying on stage." "Prophecy, strophecy," Lena replied. "We're giving the asylum its last play. If the script wants us dead, we'll rewrite it live." Hugo, equal parts terrified and thrilled, nodded. "Fine, but no one speaks a line from the file verbatim. Paraphrase everything. Keep the spirits guessing." They agreed nervously and set about transforming the sun porch. Mara draped sheets over the windows to stop the rain. Callum chalked sigils into the floorboards. "Ambience," he claimed. Felix dug candle stubs from his pockets and arranged them like footlights. Hugo taped pages of the psychiatric file onto an IV stand, creating a creepy lectern for the narrator role still uncast. Evening deepened, and with it, unease. While searching for chairs, Sarai discovered a locked office with brass letters. Dr. Lucinda Wick, Chief of Medical Ethics. She jimmy-prized the latch and found shelves of dusty reel-to-reel tapes and a single functioning phonograph. Sitting atop the machine was a fresh reel labeled Final Performance. Sarai carried it to Lena. Someone really wants an audience. They threaded the tape and pressed play. Static. Then a woman's voice, low and velvety, filled the ward. To those who trespass in the theater of the mind, remember, the curtain closes only when the story resolves. An unfinished arc is a restless ghost. The tape clicked off. No one spoke for several heartbeats. Callum finally exhaled. Ooh, high production values. Night settled. They unrolled sleeping bags between overturned gurneys, but sleep came thin. Mara dreamed of the file's pages fluttering like bats above her head, stamping each eyelid with a date of death. Today. Morning dragged itself across the asylum's stained windows. The troupe gathered around a breakfast of vending machine peanuts Hugo had found in the lobby. They avoided looking at the file, which still sat on its IV stand, its pages ruffling though no wind stirred. Lena broke the hush. Tonight. Audience arrives at 11:30. We mingle, give them lanterns, shepherd them here by midnight. The play is called Prognosis. Our only rule remains, do not quote a line exactly. If you slip, correct yourself immediately. Yes. They nodded. The day passed in practical tasks, barricading unstable floorboards, stringing guide ropes, setting up a single battery-powered floodlight for emergencies. During lunch, Felix tried out ad-lib banter on Sarai. What do you get when a hypochondriac walks into an asylum? He began. Before she could answer, a metal cabinet door swung open behind him with such force it ripped off its hinges and crashed to the ground. Felix yelped. On the cabinet's interior, scrawled in rust-brown letters, were the words, "Told you so." Felix's joke about paranoia, Mara realized. She looked at the psychiatric file. Felix's page fluttered violently. She snatched it, skimmed the death note again. Attempts a joke about paranoia, chokes on own laughter. Lena, she said quietly, it reacted to him. We didn't quote exactly, but he invoked the concept. Lena swallowed. Then we stay alert. The file isn't just words, it's a trap of associations. We'll dance around them. Hugo pulled a lighter from his pocket. We could burn it. And lose our script? Our map of landmines? Lena shook her head. Knowledge is leverage. Keep your enemies where you can see them. Dusk came, dragging fog off the river so thick the asylum seemed to float. At 11:15, flashlights bobbed through the main doors. Their audience, 30 people lured by secret emails and a social media whisper campaign. One night only, immersion event. Sign your waiver. The troupe distributed lanterns and whispered instructions. Eager chatter echoed up stairwells. A woman in a leather jacket asked Hugo, "Is it true you're performing a banned Soviet piece?" He smiled wanly. Something like that. By midnight, the sun porch ward brimmed with spectators leaning against cracked plaster walls. Dripping candles cast carnivorous shadows. Lena, as facilitator, stepped forward. "Welcome to Prognosis," she announced. "Tonight's text was found, not written. Each of us will struggle against a fate already typed. Your presence validates our attempt to improvise a happier ending. Should you hear a phrase repeated verbatim from these pages, hold your breath. And if we fail, remember us kindly." Murmurs rippled, marketing stunt, immersive flourish, nothing more. Yet some audience members folded their arms tight, sensing the seriousness beneath the showmanship. Scene 1 began. Hugo portrayed patient 31, manacled to a rusted bed frame. Mara, playing the head nurse, interrogated him about voices. Their dialogue circled deception and desire, but both actors carefully mapped synonyms, never stepping on exact phrasings. Then Hugo slipped. The script page had read, "The walls have mouths." He said, "These walls, they have mouths tonight." Close enough? Everyone tensed. Nothing happened. A soft exhale traveled the room. Relief. Scene 2. Sarai, as orderly, escorted Felix's comedic side character downstage. Felix launched into an improvised riff about conspiracy. Imagine paranoia as a roommate never pays rent, eats your leftover trauma, leaves sticky notes on your amygdala. A shutter rattled the ceiling. Dust sifted down. Felix froze. The audience laughed, thinking it staged, but Mara saw the IV stand vibrating, the file's pages lifting, flipping, searching. She mouthed to Felix, "Stop." He nodded, swallowed, changed tack. "Or maybe it moves out, yeah? Maybe we evict the bastard." The tremor eased, applause. On to scene 3, a monologue for Callum. His section of the file predicted decapitation by falling panel after he echoed a phrase, "I'm not trapped," etc. Callum stood center, candles at his feet, and began. "Suppose all this is only one cell of a larger brain. The corridors are dendrites, the audience neurotransmitters." He gestured upward, mindful of sagging ceiling plates. The audience listened, rapt. He never touched the trigger line. Panel stayed put. Intermission 15 minutes. Audience members compared impressions. Some unnerved, others hungry for more. The troupe huddled backstage among overturned filing cabinets. "We're dodging bullets," Hugo said. "We can do this." But Mara noticed Sarai trembling. "You okay?" Sarai held up her script section. "Mine predicts drowning. Here. Sarai submerges in unseen tide inside dry room. How does that even work?" "Just avoid water imagery," Lena said, forcing calm. They returned for Act 2. Scene 4 opened with Sarai alone on stage, sweeping fragments of broken mirror into a dustpan. She spoke of reflection without clarity, of wanting to see herself without distortion. Her parole from literal water references seemed safe. Then the audience's lanterns dimmed simultaneously. A hiss, gentle at first, rose from the floorboards, accompanied by chill dampness. Fog? No water vapor. Sarai's eyes widened. She stepped back, but her shoe skidded. Water filmed the linoleum, ankle deep, impossible. Buckled boards bulged, exhaling decades-old flood from some subterranean cistern. Sarai fought panic. Her next scripted sentence contained the word sink. She bit her lip, changed it. "We descend to find fresh air." The frigid water halted at her calves, then receded, sucked between floor seams as quickly as it had appeared. Audience members gasped. Some clapped at the special effect. Backstage, Lena whispered, "The file flexes reality if we shadow the lines. Our substitutions must be radical, not mere synonyms." Mara rubbed her temples. "We need a new ending fast, something the file can't anticipate." Hugo considered. "We could cede narrative control to the audience." "Crowds are unpredictable," Lena said. "Exactly. The file reads us, not them." They launched Scene 5, inviting spectators onto the playing area to diagnose the patients. Volunteers drew cards from a hat, each card bearing a question. Name a secret wish. Name a recurring dream. The participants answered, laughing, weaving unscripted content. The file flapped like a furious bird. Words rearranged themselves mid-page, but the more strangers' voices filled the ward, the less coherent the reshuffling became. Lines blurred, ink bleeding, as though the pages were sweating failure. Encouraged, Lena advanced Phase 2, a collective choice. "How should this story end?" she asked the room. A middle-aged man suggested, "With a wedding." A teenager countered, "Bloodbath." Another yelled, "Dance party." Voices overlapped until a consensus jokily emerged, a sing-along finale to banished tragedy. The troupe exchanged glances. A song was neutral, no prediction addressed music. Hugo struck a chord on his harmonica, borrowed from props, launching into an old folk tune. Felix beatboxed. Audience members linked arms, waltzing between gurneys. Even Sarai laughed, wringing seawater from her skirt. The asylum vibrated with joyous noise. Candles guttered in the gusts of spinning bodies. The file's pages discolored, edges curling like leaves in fireless heat. An eerie hum, disharmonious, rose beneath the music, a warning. Callum spotted the ceiling plate above him quiver. He remembered his foretold beheading. "Heads up!" he shouted, diving. The panel crashed harmlessly where he'd stood. Dust snowed, but no blood. They sang louder, drowning the asylum's groan. The file began to disintegrate, letters lifting off the paper like black gnats and dispersing in the candlelight. One page tore free, spiral twisting through the air toward Mara. She snatched it, read her fatal line. Mara's heart stops after admitting her deepest regret. Mara's throat tightened. She had planned a confession about abandoning her sister in hospice last year, a guilt no one knew. Words swelled in her chest, craving escape, but she slammed her jaw shut, letting the music surge through her instead. She twirled with a stranger. Laughing? The page in her hand blinked, ink gone. Sarai pointed. Look. The IV stand toppled. Pages flurried, blank sheets now, raining like freshly laundered hope. Dr. Lucinda Wickey's reel-to-reel, still resting on a side table, clicked and began playing again without anyone touching it. The story has been revised, the recorded voice intoned. Outcome unresolved. A final click, silence. The sing-along slowed, uncertainty creeping back. Audience members glanced around, unsure if this was the scheduled curtain. Lena strode to center. We've broken the prognosis, she proclaimed. Yet we must seal the cure. She raised a candle. One more act, not predetermined, not improvised, collective. She guided the audience in a simple breathing ritual. Inhale hope, exhale dread. Candles lifted. As the room synchronized, something shifted. Walls straightened, rain ceased, the smell of mold faded beneath the wax's honey scent. For a heartbeat, the asylum felt whole. Then sirens wailed outside, the melanician crew arriving early. Magnesium lights flooded windows, harsh and modern. Hugo glanced at Lena. Time, 5 a.m. They weren't due until 8. The audience began to stir uneasily. A bullhorn crackled from the courtyard. Unauthorized personnel must evacuate immediately. What about bows? Felix whispered. We bow to ourselves, Lena said. They shepherded the crowd along corridor lines chalked earlier. Outside, dawn painted the sky the color of unprocessed film. Hard-hatted workers stared, bewildered, as a procession of lantern-bearing civilians emerged from a condemned asylum, singing folk harmony. Within 15 minutes, the grounds were cleared. The troupe huddled beyond the chain-link fence while wrecking balls swung into place. One operator waved an EPA badge. No visiting. The rubble later. Callum winced at the groan of twisted steel as the ball struck the sun porch wing, punched through the roof where he'd almost been decapitated. Dust plumed, roiling. A second strike pulverized the ward. Felix removed his bowler hat, as if at graveside. Farewell, prognosis. A white-coated woman stepped from a black SUV at the curb. Late middle age, silver hair pinned in a severe chignon, eyes sharp as X-Acto blades. Her coat bore a stitched name, D.R.L. Witt. Hugo's breath caught. She'd be dead by now, wouldn't she? Lena whispered. Or never existed. Dr. Wick approached the fence, assessing them. I was curious, she said, voice identical to the tapes. Would you finish the story or become it? Lena squared her shoulders. We opted for a rewrite. A bold dramaturgy, Wick replied, almost smiling. Stories hunger, you know. Deny them closure and they'll hunt alternatives. She nodded toward the asylum's collapsing skeleton. You fed this one well. Sarai stepped forward. We beat it. Wick tilted her head. Did you? Or did it adapt? Transposing climax into coda. She produced a manila envelope and slid it through a gap in the fence. Post-mortem results. Resist reading if you value ambiguity. No one reached for it. Hugo finally took the envelope, weighing it like a live bird. Why us? He asked. Artists taste ripeness of narrative like sommeliers taste wine, Wick said. I offered vintage despair, you decanted possibility. We'll see which notes linger. A demolition blast cut short further talk charges inside the basement. The asylum imploded, roaring. Dust hurricanes surged, engulfing them. By the time it cleared, Dr. Wick was gone, SUV receding down the boulevard. They stood amid gray snowfall of pulverized brick. Hugo looked at the envelope, then at his friends. Do we open it? Mara shook her head. I'm done being scripted. Callum struck a match and touched flame to the envelope's corner. The paper curled, blackening. Felix added the blank pages he'd salvaged. Together they watched embers ride skyward. ash dancing like improvisations with gravity. Lena inhaled the smoke, felt her lungs expand, and said of fail. She turned to the troupe. Next venue? Someplace with sunlight, Sarai said. An orchard, Felix suggested. A barge on the river, Callum countered. Hugo grinned. Write me the address, but maybe let's scout in daylight. They walked, dust on their hair, purpose in their stride. Behind them, the asylum lay level, its stories spent. Before them, morning waited, blank pages fluttering in every breath, and if somewhere, unseen, a new file began to type, none of them heard it over the sound of their own footsteps leaving predictable narrative behind.